This doesn't have to mean, I'm not talking about micromanaging. I'm not talking about standing over anyone's shoulder. I'm talking about being aware. Do as I say, not as I do works, but it requires much more effort. If you're telling your people to do one thing and you don't have a really good reason for why you're not doing it too, and I mean a good reason, not just one of those funny made-up reasons, oh, because I'm so involved in this other project, they know whether you are or not. Then if it's a compliance issue, if it's an issue of this is what it's expected, and it's expected of you too, then you need to do it. And when you do so, you gain personal authority by setting the example. And that's probably one of the most powerful tools in performance management. Is I am going to do the things that I'm asking you to do. That doesn't mean I'm gonna do the work that you're being asked to do, but I'm going to do the things that you do. Oftentimes we don't want to deal with performance issues because we see it as messy. Because the only time we ever deal with a performance issue is when it does get messy. But actually, if you deal with performance issues early on, they don't have to be messy. They don't have to be documented. It's actually a very simple conversation. And we often think because the only tools we have are a bunch of paperwork and a bunch of policies and procedures, that it's just easier to let the performance issues go. However, you may have a mediocre employee for quite a while, but almost always they will move from mediocrity into objective compromising performance. We all see those people in our offices that have been kind of extracted from the rest of the team and they sit off by themselves and we're just hoping they'll leave because they've just gotten to a point where nothing can be done about them and no one wants to deal with them. That's a disservice to that employee and to the organization. So sometimes it can just be forces beyond our control. Performance is due to some reason that is outside the area of the organizational concern and should not be addressed. A death in the family, some major emotional issue. Unfortunately, in our lives, there is no such thing as closing the briefcase. We all had that conversation before. Work stays at work and home stays at home. Psychological research has confirmed that that is not the case. Our emotional minds, our minds are like a large pool of water, and if you drop something in one side of the pond, then the ripples are going to go through everywhere else. Everything affects everything else. We bring work home, and we bring home to work. And if that issue is affecting the performance, it is an organizational concern. Now, that doesn't mean you have to address the issue. But it does mean that you have to address the performance. A great example of this I'll give is that happened personally to me. I was in an organization before I came to the University of Houston in construction management, and we were we were coming close on the Toyota Center. We were about to close it, and I had a major life event happen. I really didn't talk to anyone about it at work, but I almost stopped working. I mean, I was coming in, but I just kind of sit at my computer and stare at it. It was just really hard. Um, that went on about 2 days, and my boss, the head of the project, actually, not just my boss, but the head of the project, came in and closed my door, and he basically told me that he noticed that he wasn't sure what happened, but he noticed something was different, and he didn't need to know why or understand, but I was important, and they needed me to be a part of the team, and he wanted me to go ahead and go home for the rest of the day and think it over and decide whether or not I wanted to come back. Um, and I didn't walk out of that discussion feeling angry or, how dare you. I went home and thought about it. And I came back the next day, and I was able to work. It was like that conversation kind of helped change my perspective and made it so that I could come back to work. Now, he could have waited until things backed up so much that I was compromising the project, but he didn't. He basically came in and said, we want you here. You need to decide if you want to be here. Go take some time and think about it. And I did, and I came back. So I had this little section I called Navi Leadership, and I made these slides, this part of the presentation after that movie came out with all the Avatar, with the blue people in it, and so they had that whole thing where they do I see you and they touch each other's face. But really, not addressing a performance issue when we observe it is a missed opportunity to positively impact an employee. And I mean right away, almost in the instant. Um, you don't lower the bar. In fact, we should be looking to raise the bar more often than not. You don't ever lower it. So when we have this opportunity it, to see the change, instead of going, oh, it's okay, actually, what I expected of you before, I don't anymore. We've just taught that employee a very valuable lesson. If you make small incremental changes and do less and less and less over time, I will probably just go ahead and lower the bar rather than deal with it. Okay? That's what you're saying in your actions. But when you say the bar is going to stay where it is, and I've noticed that you've just dipped below it, you remind the employee that they're valuable because you saw it, right? You're saying that your skills, your work is crucial, and I've noticed the change. Um, we can be sympathetic to if that's appropriate, but we always maintain expectations of performance. We always know you are not where we want you to be. Um, Lastly, what we often do what managers often do is they just basically have the if you could read my mind approach, right? We just all think that people should know, employees should know better. I'm going to tell you the best management advice that was ever given to me. Anytime you think, well, they should know better, you're going down the wrong path because they probably don't. And basically what you're saying is, I don't want to have to deal with this. The issue is rarely directly addressed. It's usually by some broadcast memo. We have a big staff meeting, and we talk about the issue with everyone, and we go, I'm not saying anyone. Even if the person's there, they know what you're talking about, right? But we just don't directly address it. Um, in the cases of the they should knows, it's also most often a discrepancy between your actions and your words, right? It's human nature to test boundaries. And when people see that there's a difference in what you say and what you do, they're going to go with what you said. And finally, it's just easier to address performance. So for the rest of our presentation, I'm going to go back to this slide and talk to you about different scenarios that we may encounter. All right, so let's say that we have a performance issue, and that performance issue is tardiness. That's an easy one. Everybody in your organization is expected to be at their desk by 9. I know that more and more that's not often the case, but in many organizations it is. By 9 o'clock, everybody needs to be at their desk. You have an employee who is always at their desk at 9 o'clock, right? One day they come in at 9:05. Now, if you do what most managers do, you're going to say, oh, it's no big issue. If you address the issue, just simply address it, you will make a difference in that employee's performance. Now, here's where the mistake is, because the only tool we have, and this is something we go into much more in depth in our leadership program, the only tool you have is you were late, and now let's have a big formal coaching discussion about this. It's not even necessary. Simply pointing out that you noticed. And it's one of the things that we discuss in a much longer discussion about this idea of authenticity that we use from actually a lady named Madison Gray, who taught me in our coaching program. But basically, if you just simply say, and I do this from time to time, you're 5 minutes late. You're not in trouble. You're not going to get written up, but you're 5 minutes late. All I'm telling that employee is, I've noticed that you missed the bar. That's it. The world didn't come to an end. You're probably going to get all your work done today. I understand that. But I also noticed that you were 5 minutes late. When you do that, and it's right up here where that performance first begins to dip, more often than not, the employee will go, wow, okay, got it. And then they'll self-correct. He or she noticed, I need to not be late, right? You have a report that's due, or you have you want a certain kind of signature to be at the end of emails, or vacation needs to be turned in 2 weeks beforehand. Someone brings that vacation request to you 1 week beforehand. They work hard. You want to go ahead and grant it, and you're going to grant it. That's fine. Simply pointing out we want performance. This vacation request is 1 week late. Lets them know that one, I've seen and noticed, and I'm mentioning to you that I saw it. We don't wear blue jeans on Thursday, or simply saying you're wearing blue jeans and it's Thursday. Simple things like that. When you have those conversations consistently, and employees start to realize, okay, it's not that they've got their eye on me, but when they say something, they mean it. And I don't have to take the time to try and figure out what they actually mean. Because see, that's oftentimes the game that we get caught in is, okay, they just came out with this new policy. Now I'm going to try and figure out how much of this I actually have to do. And 9 times out of 10, in most organizations, what we find out is that we don't have to do everything that they're asking us to do. So, again, just a slice out of our leadership program. But when we look at performance, and if you are dealing with performance only when it gets down to objective compromising performance, I would suggest that you begin to be a little more proactive. Look for the potential trends, the things where you know people are going to change, where they're going to try to challenge when you're rolling something new out or when there's a change. Look for that and be prepared with a response. Have a plan in place to say, the first time this happens, this is what I'm going to do. It lets people know that you're attentive and that you're watching, and that what you said is true. What you asked them to do, you're true to your word. And finally, you want to be the example. Now, this is all I have for you today. I'm going to go ahead and open up the room for questions. So if you're on the phone in just a minute, you'll be able to talk. I'm going to enable audio. And you can also chat a question over in the side of the screen. So if you have any questions, you can go ahead and ask them by phone, or you can do so on the screen. I'm turning on all your audios right now, so just give me just a minute. Does anyone have a question? Okay. That's a great question. If you address an employee with a minor issue, do you feel that that's nitpicking? I don't think it is. I wouldn't consider it nitpicking. I think if it depends on your approach, and again, we go into this in more detail, and I hate saying that over and over again, it's true. We go into this in more detail in our leadership program. But when you take the approach of, I'm simply letting you know that I'm aware of something, instead of, um, I've told you before, you should know better, putting all those words in front of it. If you just say, you were 5 minutes late, and that's it, and then just move on, it tends to go very well. Now, this doesn't mean the first time you're going to get it right, but it is, I don't think it's nitpicking um, myself. Any other questions? If you have a question or you're asking it by audio, you can click the little hand next to the checkbox, and I can activate your audio.